Okay, once again, we're glad to have everybody here, all the visitors, and all our members, and to join us in worship today. Last week we started a series on the armor of God, and what does it mean, and how can it apply to us today. And so I'm starting up on that again and getting a little bit more into it. Last week we just basically read over the scripture that said that Paul wrote in Ephesians about the armor. And then today we're going to take the first few verses and I'm going to kind of discuss those and get into some other stuff with it. So if you'll turn to Ephesians 6, verse 10 in your Bibles. It's Ephesians 6, verse 10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand strong against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand strong in the Lord. What does Paul mean by be strong in the Lord? Up in verse 10. He is telling us that we are to trust in God and Jesus and depend on them to help us through all of our troubles. And sometimes you hear people say, let go and let God, which is basically saying the same thing as be strong in the Lord. Turn loose of all of everything in our lives and say, God, I give it up to you. Take it and use it for your will. Then Paul goes on and says, put on the whole armor of God. Where do we get that armor from? Who provides the armor? From God. Now, is Paul talking about a physical suit of armor, like you see in medieval times? No, it's a metaphorical, but it is, in a way, it is a suit of armor, but it's depending on God to give it to us. So if it's not a physical piece of armor, we can go down to the local blacksmith and buy it and have him build it to our specifications, our body size and everything. How do we get this armor? Yeah. Read the Bible. Pray. Come to church. Sunday school. Where we can learn more about God and draw closer to him. And in your prayer times, it's not just you talking directly to God. There are times you just need to be still and listen for him. Listen to what God is telling us. In verse 12, who do we struggle against? Where do these struggles come from? we have fears, we have doubts, might have some thinking that we shouldn't have. Where do all those negative type of thoughts come from? Satan, the devil. Yeah, he is the author of all the lies and evil in the world. And that's what Paul is saying in verse 12 and 13. We need to trust in the armor, put on the armor of God to stand and be able to stand firm against the devil. Now, in the Bible, do we have an example of somebody using the armor of God? Paul was one, yeah. But there's another one, even way before Paul came along. Joshua. But the one I'm thinking of is David. In 1 Samuel 17, if you'll turn in your Bibles to there. Now, the story takes up a couple chapters. We're not going to read the whole story. I'm going to hit some of the highlights, and this sermon is probably actually going to wind up being 2 sermons. So if you want to find out the rest of it, you'll have to come back next week. But the story opens in verses 1 through 10. The Israelites and the Philistines are lined up on the battlefield, ready to go to battle. They've been there for a while. And this is when Saul is still king of Israel. And as we all know, Saul wasn't that great of a king. He failed a lot because he did not follow the instructions of God. And the champion of the Philistines was Goliath. Now Goliath stood 6 cubits and a span. And what that measurement they calculated out to come is approximately 9.5 feet tall. Because they say a cubit is measured from your elbow, from the tip of your middle finger down to your elbow. It's an average of 17 to 18 inches. And that's what they say a cubit is. And a span is your hand spread open from the tip of your thumb over here to your little finger. That's about 8 inches. So 9.5 feet we measure. I'm 6 foot, so he's taller than I can reach. He can stand under the basketball goal and dunk real easy. He wouldn't even have to jump. Okay. And it talks about the author of 1 Samuel goes on through and talks about his armor, how much it weighs, and then he talks about the weapons that Goliath carries. There's 3 weapons that we see Goliath having on it, strapped to his body with his armor. One is the javelin. And a javelin could be, I looked up, there's no true figures where how far javelins could be thrown, because they were looking at the Olympic Games and the measurements they gave in the games, it's hard to really know exactly how far it is. But they said a javelin could be thrown, a good javelin thrower, one that's trained and knows how to throw it, could throw 100, 150 yards. You know, that's a football field or past. The current world record for men throwing the javelin is 107.7 yards. So that's 21 feet past a football field. A football field is 100 yards in length from end line to end line. And he's 21 feet past that. But that is based on a redesigned javelin. The Olympic committees back in '86 redesigned the javelins because they moved the center of gravity forward 1.5 inches. And that reduced the distance the javelin could throw by about 10%, I believe is what they said. So that would make it, that wouldn't let it travel as far, and it'd make it stick into the ground better. And the reason they did that is they were, at the time, they were getting so good, they probably could have thrown out of the stadiums that they had been in, or at least off of the field that they were marking for their distance. And so they moved the weight forward to shorten how far that javelin could actually be thrown. Now the spear of David, or not David, but of Goliath, it says the staff of the spear was like a weaver's beam. Okay, and it took me a little research on this, figure out what the weaver's beam means. A weaver's beam that's a reference to a loom for making rugs and different things like that, cloth. And depending on the size of the rug or cloth, your beam would be just a little bit longer than that, a couple feet longer maybe. So you got enough room for all your other operations. So there was not a true set figure for a beam, but they estimated that his shaft, the shaft of Goliath's spear, is about 8 feet long. And it was turned down to about 2.5 inches, 2 to 2.5 inches in diameter. Now, I'm not sure what type of wood they use because they don't mention it, but that's a pretty heavy piece of wood. And then the spear on it, the metal point, weighed, let's see where. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, it weighed 600 shekels. Okay, and in looking up one of the Bibles I got, it's got a table of conversion table in the back. And this particular one said a shekel weighs about 2/5 of an ounce, or 4/10 of an ounce. So it's not too heavy for 1 shekel. But 600 shekels is 240 ounces. When you convert that into pounds, that's approximately 15 pounds. The weight of a bowling ball. You know, and that was just for the metal tip. So you had 15 pounds on the metal tip plus the weight of the wood that he had to throw. Goliath's a pretty big guy. in order to throw something like that and to be the champion. Because champion in those days and time and in medieval times is the one that had won the most wars for the army. He single-handedly would defeat the enemies. It's like you can notice on certain basketball teams sometimes, if their star player gets injured, you can see how much they depended on that guy. It's the same way with the champion. He is the one that would win. He is the one everybody's afraid of. And so they would send him out first. And usually it was just that one-on-one battle, and that would decide the battle. So Goliath, and then Goliath has a sword. The Bible does not give a description of how big his sword is. You know, but you can imagine it, compared to these others, it's going to be pretty big and heavy. And then he also had there was somebody else whose sole job was to carry Goliath's shield in front of him to protect Goliath. That was all the guy did. And with Goliath being 9 feet tall, you know, I don't know exactly how tall the shield would be, but, you know, it'd have to come down quite a ways, protect down, and, you know, come up to around his head and stuff, you know, protect his chest and heart areas. So that would be fairly heavy to carry for one person. Now let's look at David. Or actually, let's go back. Goliath, it says, I'm kind of jumping around, but Goliath would come out twice a day, in the morning and in the evening, saying, who's going to come and fight me? If you defeat me, the Philistines will be your servants. But if I kill the person you send, y'all will serve us. And he's doing that twice a day for 40 days. And I kind of jumped ahead because we later get that figure later on in the script, in the passage. But now here comes David. David is the youngest of 8 boys. He's already been anointed king, but he hasn't fully ascended to the throne yet. 3 of the boys, 3 of his brothers, are on the battlefield already. You know. David was somewhere maybe between 10 to 19, I'm guessing. The Bible does not really give an age on how old he was, but I say 19 because back in Numbers chapter 1 verse 3, God tells Moses and Aaron to conduct a census of Israel, of all the tribes, and only men that are 20 years of age or older and able to serve in the military were to be counted for that particular census. So we can assume that David's not quite 20 years old yet, because some of the other passages he's calling youth. And for us, a youth is middle school up to high school, graduating high school, senior. Somewhere in that age range, you know. But things could have been different. So he was fairly young. His dad, Jesse, had sent David to the battlefield to take food and deliver food to his brothers, because at that time the armies did not have mobile kitchens and dedicated staff to prepare the meals for the soldiers. Plus as a way to get information back and forth on how people were doing. Unlike today where, you can hook up on a satellite dish or whatever, instantly get you can see somebody in real time. So the families provided food and clothing and armor as needed for the soldiers, based on the reports that came back from the field. And so that's the mission David was on when he went to the battlefield. He was taking food for his brothers and taking a gift or a bribe to the commander of the division his brothers were in. And what that was doing was to ensure that his brothers got the food. And then he was able to also talk to his brothers and find out information, and then he would go back home and tell Jesse. Anyways, while David was there, talking to the soldiers and his brothers, Goliath comes out and starts saying, "Hey, Israel, come on. Who are you going to send to me? Send me somebody to fight me. I'm wanting to fight. Come on, don't you have anybody brave enough to fight me? You're the servants of Saul. Saul's supposed to be this great king. Why don't you have somebody come over and show me how great of a king he is?" And because of the way Goliath was dressed, with all of his armor, his weapons, the men of Israel were afraid. Now, why were they afraid? They're supposed to be the army of the Lord's army, but yet they were afraid. Why? They did not fully trust God. They were, and even Saul had tried to entice somebody to go out by saying, "Look, if you go out and you defeat this man, I'll give you untold riches. You can marry my daughter, and your family will not have to pay taxes anymore in the land of Israel." But still, nobody was willing to step up. And while David was talking to some of the other soldiers and he's getting that information, David's older brother, and those of you that have had older brothers or even older sisters, you're the younger one, can understand sibling rivalry sometimes. I think that's kind of what gets on going here. Plus, like I said, David has already been anointed king of Israel, even though he's just not sitting on the throne yet. He's still biding his time, because he's still got a lot of learning to do. But anyways, his oldest brother goes, "Why are you here? Who did you leave our sheep with?" Because David was the shepherd for the family, taking care of the sheep, because that was a source of income probably, as well as source of food. And the oldest brother also says, "The only reason you're here is you want to see the battle. You want to see a fight. Why are you here?" And David, being the youngest brother, and if you're the younger brother, you sometimes go, "What have I done now? All I'm doing is talking. Is there any harm in me talking to somebody, getting information to take back to their family? Why are you yelling at me? I'm just trying to get a report, take back to the town." And anyways, in the military, word gets around quickly. Saul finds out about it. And he asks for David to be brought to him. And I'm going to leave a cliffhanger there. We're going to kind of stop there. And we'll pick up with the meeting between David and Saul and what goes on from there. I know it's kind of a weird spot to stop, but that's kind of where I decided to stop it. And, so, and like I asked already, is why was Israel afraid to fight Goliath? It's because they did not trust in God. And if you remember back in Joshua, some of the latter parts of Moses, when Moses was around before he passed away, they would go into battles. Before the battles, God would tell them what to do step by step. Tell them exactly what he wanted them to do. And if they did everything God wanted, they would win. Because they trusted God. But if they did not do everything God wanted, or there was a sin of some type within the army or the camp, they lost the battle. Because they did not trust God. And I remember there's one battle, I can't remember exactly where it is, but it is when Moses, he was getting ready to, he was on his way out basically. It was one of his last battles probably, where Moses was instructed to stand above the battlefield and keep his hands raised. And as he got tired of standing there, because the battle was raging for a long time, his arms started coming down. And the army of Israel started losing. And so they had to have two other people come up and hold his arms up and keep them up so that Israel could win the battle. And as we see with several other chapters, battles, when God told them don't take any spoils and stuff, if they did, there was trouble in the camp afterwards until they figured out what went on. So, finishing up, are any of you fighting a losing battle, or a battle that you feel like you're losing of some type? I don't know what it can be or anything, but it can be anything. Is there something in your life you dread and fear? And if you want to get that turned around, come forward to the altar here, and we can talk and pray and invite Christ into your heart if you haven't become a Christian yet, or rededicate your life if you have. Or do you feel that God is leading you to join this church? Come on and join. We're happy to have you. We're glad you're here today, and we'd like to see you some more. Or if you don't want to talk, but you just got something you just want to pour your heart out to God about, come on up to the altar here, and kneel or sit, or you can stay at your seat. But pray and just pour out your heart to God. Tell Him your fears. Tell Him your desires, what you want to see. And just give it to God. And let God take the battle for you. So as we get ready to stand and get ready to sing, I'll be down front here. The camera will be off. What I'm thinking of doing is starting to put videos of my sermon on YouTube or someplace like that, and to where other people can see it, and hopefully help attract people to the church and get them in. But for the invitations, that's a private matter between you and God. So that will not be filmed, so don't worry about the camera. It'll be turned off.
Number 183.
And if you will, please stand and join in singing hymn number 183.
183.